Welcome to Quilting on the Side, the podcast where we uncover the secrets to turning your passion for quilting into a profitable side hustle.
I'm Tori from the Quilt Patch by Tori.
And I'm Andi from True Blue Quilts. And together, we're your co-hosts on this exciting journey of creativity, entrepreneurship, and all things quilting.
We're here to help you navigate the world of quilt pattern design, course creation, digital marketing, and running an online quilt business. We've been through the ups and downs ourselves, so we know what it takes to make money from your favorite hobby.
That's right, Tori. We're going to share our experiences on how we've grown our businesses while balancing family with other paying work responsibilities. It's not always easy, but it's definitely possible. Hello to our crafty side hustlers. We are so excited to dive into today's topic of self-publishing. I know that being an avid reader from a young age, it was always a dream of mine to write a book. And so when I got into the quilting industry, and chatted with my mom, I've told that story, and we put ourselves out there, and the thrill, and you've experienced it too, Tori, of opening that box and seeing your book is really exciting. And I'm sure there's a lot of other people that, besides the personal satisfaction of seeing your name in print, that minor celebrity status, what motivated you to put your Workshops Unleashed book out in the world?
Well, I never thought I'd write a book. I was a kid who struggled to learn how to read and to spell when I was in elementary school. And then my sister was the one that kind of inspired me to keep trying to read, because she said, I'll never forget it, when we were like 9, and she's my twin, so we're the same age. And she told me that she sees pictures in her mind when she reads, and I'm like, that's not a thing. What? And she's like, no, it's really cool. It's like a movie in your head, and you get to imagine the characters. So it motivated me to learn how to read, but to write was a struggle. So when I started to write blogs, I found that it was a really great way to get my voice out there, to get information out there without having to be on video all the time. So I had little kids, still little kids. I had a little kid, and now I have little kids. So there's hardly ever quiet time when they're around. So that's why I started to write. And then the book, took a journey to get there. Right. So I hit creative burnout when I was teaching patterns, and I was creating patterns and teaching workshops. And I pivoted to what I was enjoying, which was the business part and teaching the teacher. But I wasn't able to show up live with the courses that I wanted to teach, which at the time was the Quilt Patch Course Academy. And before that was a creatives course design course. I wasn't great at naming things. But so the book came out of that. So the book is a combination of both the blogs that I was writing and the course that I taught. And then I felt this drive to get this information out there, but I couldn't show up in the way I was used to showing up. So this book actually was written all in, the main part of it was written in one sitting. I sat down to write a guide. I told my husband, I need like 4 hours. I'm going to sit down. I'm going to write this guide real quick and develop it into a freebie. And then that guide ended up getting longer and longer and longer the more I added to it, grabbing from blogs and stuff like that. Then I realized it could be a book. It ended up being almost 40 pages. And I was like, wait, this could actually become more than just a guide. So I did end up creating that free guide. It was that 10 questions guide that I do. It's a free guide you can still get for my website. But this book came out of that drive to reach teachers in the quilting and the craft industry when they were ready, rather than trying to show up live all the time and teach this course. And it wasn't one that I was ready to record, because teaching a topic is so versatile, and it depends on what you're teaching. And there are some universal concepts, which is what the book covers, but I wanted to be there to be able to hold their hand, but I couldn't walk them through for 10 weeks. And that's what the course was. It was originally 4, and everyone was telling me it was too short. So I tried to make it 6. And then it ended up kind of being like 10 because we put sorry, what's the word? Where you do the thing. Implementation. Thank you. Implementation weeks in between. So it just kept growing. And I was like, this is impossible for me to keep going with. So instead of recording it, I turned it into a book.
Yep.
So mine was a really long, really long why I wrote the book. But Andi, why did you write and I believe you have at least two books.
Yeah. I co-authored 2 books with my mom, and part of it was what I described at the beginning of just wanting to get our names out there, and write a book. And so we thought of these different themes, and it kind of goes along with what you were saying, that you have this information that you want to get out, and books are one way to do that in the quilt world, to get your name out there. And I think even more than patterns, books have a little more weight and authority in the space, that, because even in the quilt design world, everybody's writing patterns. But when I say, oh, yeah, I have my book, it takes it up a notch. So it gives you a little more credibility. And when I say we, my mom and I were thinking of niches to put our designs into. So we kind of reverse engineered it and said, at the time, there were a lot of people talking about monochromatic quilts. That was a gap in the industry. And so we went ahead and built all our designs to fill that topic space. So I was also thinking of another designer, Beth, of Eva Page Designs, and she has a technique for half square triangles. And so she wrote a book, and all the patterns use that technique. So if you are teaching a technique similar to what you were talking about, Tori, with your, I want to teach quilters how to build their workshop and structure their teaching, so that evolved into a whole book. So those are kind of the whys behind it. You've got a technique or a topic that you're an expert in. You want to get that out to more people. You want to build your credibility in the industry. I think those are all great motivations for quilting, and publishing in the quilting world.
Well, it makes me think of one other way was I got a book from, and let me get her name right, Julie Burton. It's called Imperfect, Embracing Improv Quilting. And what she did was write, it's almost like a story with quilt patterns in it. And she goes on her own journey of improv quilting. And I loved it. And it was a journey, it was a technique of improv quilting, right? But she created her own patterns out of it. So it goes along the lines of picking a technique, and then and she went story form. So I really like that one. So I just wanted to add that choice in there.
Yeah, I may have to explore that to share the journey that I went on with the Little Bit Different series. And because I've thought about putting that was a block of the month type series of designs that I created, and you could just package all of those together and put it out as a book. But yeah, that's really interesting to weave a story into your design work, and share it that way. So that's great. Getting into a little more of the specifics of books and things, what do you see as maybe the page count? That you talked a little bit about how you were going to write a guide and it just kept expanding until you felt it was the size of a book. And I think there's definitely a difference between a pattern booklet and a book. So where do you make that determination?
I honestly looked it up on Amazon KDP. I was like, how many pages do I need to make this an actual book? And I believe, and you can go look just in case it's changed, but I believe it was 60. And so when I had almost 40 and I hadn't even added my course material in, I went and got the old work, or it's not even that old, but the worksheet, and it was 36 pages. And I'm like, I have a book. Like I have enough for a book, especially if I write out all like the shorthand stuff and things
Yeah.
like that from the workshop. So yeah, that's how I determined it. I just looked it up to see
Uh-huh.
what the minimum page count was for Amazon KDP. What
It
about
was
you? What
60.
was, I
Uh,
believe it was 60. Yeah.
yeah. Um, since my books were more geared around quilt patterns, we knew that you want between 10 to 12 patterns would be meaty enough for a book. You're not going to put you I wouldn't think that you would put a book out with just like 3 quilt patterns. That may not be enough. But yeah, I tend to think they're in around the 90-ish pages, is definitely where you want to hit. And I'm remembering some other discussions with people that there's a price break. There's a price point for like 97 pages. And then if you go up above 100, definitely you're into a higher price point for publishing your book. So, again, quilting crafting topics are probably going to be in that 70-ish pages. um, if you were doing more of a story format, multiple, the nonfiction narrative type things, you'd probably be, in the 120 to 150 page range. But yeah, that you definitely need to think about the length of your topic before you get into self publishing.
And one thing I wasn't really considering at the beginning was what me and my editor ended up calling the pretty pages.
Mm-hmm.
So having those pages like the title pages and the acknowledgement page, I kind of considered a pretty page, and like things. And then we had a filler page at the beginning and the end. That way, it gave some branding to the book, gave some character, but it also gave me a place to sign, and it gave them a place for notes, and things like that. So we called those pretty pages, which helped to fill out a little bit more. So it ended up growing, and I remember hitting one. I remember passing 200, and then when we went through and did the line by line editing, it kept going down, and I was like,
Oh.
oh, maybe we'll still get 200, maybe we'll still get 200, and it ended up at 191. And I was like, oh, so close.
Yep, yep. Those pretty pages do make a difference. And as I was uh, doing my books more around patterns, each pattern then became like a little chapter, and so you would have the image of the quilt at the beginning as a page break, a section break. And when I did the second book, the angle play book, we did a different solid color for each of the patterns. And so we had, obviously the full color printing then made a difference with those colors in as a background of the page. It wasn't just a color photo on a white page. We also put in quilt black and white line drawings, coloring pages at the end too. So, we had a couple different things there for the pretty pages as well. So, yeah, that's always fun. So, why did you choose self publishing versus trying to find an actual, publishing company to pitch to?
I struggled with the decision. I went back and forth for probably 8 months, honestly. And it was, I think I finally really committed to self-publishing at H&H when I had my first printed manuscript, and it was about 100 pages, and it was 8 by 11 pages, so big pages. And I just printed it at Office Depot, and I was showing it around to those in the quilting industry, my friends that I've seen online that I finally got to meet in person, and I was just showing them the ARC reader version. So there was no pictures, there was no fancy, no pretty pages, except for the title and a few of the section headers. And they were talking about what needs to be added, what could be added. They were talking about, I was asking them questions about traditional publishing versus self publishing. And the more I heard about traditional publishing versus self publishing, I realized that the way I needed to go, and it was a fine margin, but the way I needed to go for myself was self publishing. mainly because I wanted full control over what went into my book, what it was called, what it looked like. Even though I knew that would be extra work, um, I wanted that full control for, honestly, my audience, because the questions they were coming to me with and that I was answering in the book, I didn't want to leave that information out. I didn't want an editor to come in who didn't know the quilting industry or who didn't know teachers of the quilting industry and what those teachers were struggling with, and change the content of the book based on what they think would be more popular, which I'm sure they would have great feedback and have some great ideas, but I didn't want to miss those the key information that they were coming to me with, that I didn't think most people in the quilting industry, outside of those who teach teachers, would get those types of questions. So that was my main thing. I wanted full control of the content, and I wanted to also get this out on my own timeline. So we talked a little bit before we started recording about how the traditional publishing, it takes quite a while, and even self-publishing, it takes a while, especially if you're creating quilts, right? And then I was writing and rewriting and editing, and my copy editor was going in, she was editing, and we were going back and forth on all kinds of things and different aspects and details within the book. So many details that you have to go over. That it still took a little over a year to fully get this book out, or actually, I think it was closer to a year and a half.
Yeah.
Yeah, a year and
Which
a half.
is a similar time frame to what I've heard of traditional publishers are definitely going to be at least 18 months to 2 years, as you go through the process of doing the pitch and working with the editor and then getting your projects done. Um, so yeah, self-publishing, the I think one of the benefits is you think you can get it done on a faster timeline, but in reality, it is what it is, and it takes time. So, but yeah, that
Well,
control is definitely a key factor.
it wasn't just the fact that I thought maybe it was a maybe, I could do it faster, but it was also when to release it. Because the quilting industry, we kind of go to sleep over the summer. There are still some things that happen during the summer, but for the most part, things slow down. And I heard a podcast with, her name was Tori Dunlap. Tori Dunlap? The financial feminist. She came out with a book and she was talking about self-publishing. And her publisher chose the date for her release, which ended up being like New Year's Day or the day before New Year's Day. And I was like, that would have been horrible. Like, I don't know what I would have done if I couldn't choose at least about when to release the book. So that was another part where I wanted that say so.
Yeah, yeah. The other thing I have heard over the years in the quilting industry is this whole concept of your intellectual property rights, the contracts that come out with publishing companies, and when projects get killed, you'll be halfway through working on a book and then they decide, oh yeah, no, we decide we don't want to do this, and you're left with a half finished project. Of course you can take it then and publish it yourself, but and yeah, there's a lot of things, and I don't want to speak on traditional publishing having never gone through that. It's that hearsay kind of thing, but there are other things to consider. And yeah, if you get yourself into a contract with a traditional publisher, you definitely want to have some expert advice looking over that contract. And I am not a legal expert, so I am not going to touch that one. But you
Yeah, no, for
mentioned
sure.
several times working with an editor. So there are small businesses out there. There are all sorts of supportive people that can help you if you are taking this DIY route to self-publish your manuscript.
Yeah, I love my copy editor. Her name is Melissa, and she was fabulous. She's the one that kept me on track. She and she helped me improve my writing. So when I started, she was kind of going through. She's like, "This is really rough." I'm like, "I know. Can you help me?" And then she would go through and she would edit it big picture first, and then we went at the end right before publishing is when we did line editing. So she went in and she fixed the commas and like little things like that, and then we reformatted. But I hired her as a contractor. She worked based off of service and project based. So it wasn't hourly; it was project based. So her first, what she did for me was a 500-word edit to see how we would work together, how the writing was. We went over the project and what I kind of envisioned for the book. And at that time, I just kind of want to write a book. And she was like, okay, well, let me ask you these questions. And she really helped me fill out why I was writing it, what needed to go in, what didn't need to go in, and things like that. So she didn't just help with grammar and layout. She also helped me with the big picture and really figuring out what needed to stay and what needed to go. And then also filling out the writing. So I'm very blunt. I want to be like, here is the information. She's like, is this good information? But we need to illustrate a little bit. Can you bring in a story? Can you bring in an example? I was like, oh yeah. So as we went, I was able to kind of work in stories more and more, and I felt my writing improving. And so that was awesome. So working with a copy editor is something that I would highly suggest if you're self-publishing, especially for the first time. And she gave me a go-to person for questions about self-publishing because she had a little experience in it, and together we could figure it out. Like the copyright page, we had no idea what to do for the copyright page. I'm like, we have to put this information somewhere. Where are we going to put this information? She's like, I have an idea. Let me go do some research. And within 24 hours, she had a guide for me to walk through with a template. And she's like, here, just plug in the numbers. I'll put it in the book, all formatted exactly how it's supposed to go. But she included that guide so I could read it myself. So in the future, if I wanted to take over the copyright page, I'd have the guide for me. And she was wonderful. So I do highly suggest working with a copy editor.
And where did you find her?
I found her through, the acronym always gets me. It's a Military Spouse Entrepreneur Network. And I have, if you follow me on Instagram, there is a link to the guide in my links in my profile. So if you go in there and you look for the Military Spouse Entrepreneur, I think it's just business guide or guide along those lines. I hired a military spouse because I'm a military spouse, and that's one of the things I like to do with my business is to hire other military spouses. So that's where I go first. But you can find copy editors in many contracting places like Upwork, Fiverr, things like that. Is Fiverr one? I know Fiverr just came to mind.
I think they change their names occasionally, but that was the name that came to my mind as well for, like you said, those independent contractors. And I'm hearing a lot more from the quilt. We mentioned this so many times, the Quilt Pattern Designer Facebook group, but a lot of those designers also do tech editing type of work as part of their business. So just ask the question in whatever groups you are involved in. But yeah, I love that idea of supporting the Military Spouse Network. So we'll definitely get those links in.
Yes, definitely ask around, see who's worked with a copy editor, and get those references. Definitely.
So let's talk a little bit about the actual process of getting your book to print, because that's the other benefit that I saw with self-publishing was that you didn't have to, fill your garage with thousands of copies of your book, that you can put it on, I used the Kindle Direct Publishing, which goes straight to Amazon, which is a print on demand. I give my customers the link, they order it, it's printed and shipped directly to them. I don't have a huge inventory unless I choose to order author copies for, in-person events, which I have done quite a bit. So what do you see as the pros and cons, benefits of going, directly to that print on demand type service?
No, I love it. I mean, I just mentioned I'm a military spouse, so we move a lot, and having the extra inventory, the military only helps you move your business up to a certain weight limit, and books are heavy. So I'm like, I can't have boxes of books. So I went with Amazon KDP. So I did both Amazon KDP and Ingram Spark. And I found benefits for both. I was really going for a quality product with this book. So I had a couple renditions, a couple editions. not editions, but like so I went in and you're able to print an author copy before it's published. So you can see what it looks like before you finalize it on both of those programs. So I got them both back, and I did a little reveal on my Instagram. So if you're really curious to see what the first ones look like, you can go see them. The Amazon one has the band across the cover, and actually I can grab it. There we go. All right, so we've got the Amazon one has the band across the front, so you know it's an author copy. So if you ever see this, it's from Amazon KDP. And so you're able to order the prints before you put in an actual order for others to order. And I loved getting these. That way I could see the layout before the actual printed version, because you'll notice on the real version, which I have over there, the title page is much bigger. So like the words are a lot bigger over there, because in Canva, where we designed the cover, this looked huge. And then on the book itself, it's pretty big, but like it wasn't the impact I wanted. So we changed that. We were able to change the little things on the inside and to reformat it and to see what the color looked like, because with quilting the color is huge. The visual representation of your book is going to be really important. So understanding that page thickness counts, not only for weight but also to keep your color looking good. Color, if you want to go what do you call it? I think it was premium. That's the word. Premium color. It is way more expensive. It actually doubled my price of the printed book to go premium color for Amazon KDP, but it was really worth it. These ones are really, these pictures came out kind of washed out. Like here's one. If you're on YouTube, you can see it's a lot more like washed out and kind of grayed out, and the paper's really thin. So I went with the premium color, even though it did up the price of the book. And then with Ingram Spark, the color was good. The color was really good, but the paper was so thin that you could like see right through it. And I wanted you to be able, and like if I was just reading this like it was a novel, it wouldn't bother me. But I wanted to make sure they could write in it and not see that bleed going back and forth. So I went with the thicker paper, which of course upped the price of the book. But Ingram Spark gave me more options for those kinds of things. Those little the paper with the premium color, color versus black and white, all those options. There were more under Ingram Spark than there were Amazon KDP. But not having inventory is amazing. Not having to ship all these out myself is amazing. So I am able to get links for both Amazon and Ingram Spark and post them to my website, my social media, so people can go and buy straight from them, and then they print and they ship everything. Yes. So that's been amazing.
Yep. And just to take a moment here to plug the Workshops Unleashed book as the sponsor of this episode. Thank you, Tori. We will definitely have links there so you can go and buy a copy of Workshops Unleashed and start your quilt and craft teaching career. That's awesome.
Thank you,
Andi. So I'm going to run down some of the things we've talked about with self-publishing and print on demand. Obviously, it might be faster to get your ideas out in the world. It gives you control over the timeline and the product. But with the flip side of that is that all the responsibility falls on you for editing. We've mentioned you can hire editors and the formatting. Correct me if I'm wrong, there's guidelines on both the Kindle platform and the Ingram Spark that give you all the guidelines for how to lay out your paper and where the margins need to be and all that kind of stuff.
Yes, definitely.
And then that brings us to, once you have the book, the marketing. Some people may be thinking, well, if I go with a publisher, then they'll help with the marketing. And yes, they do help, but they're expecting you to drive eyeballs to the product. And so no matter which avenue you take to publish a book or a pattern or get your work out there, you need to be doing marketing. So what quick tips do you have for our audience in terms of marketing a book that you have self-published?
Well, the first thing that comes to mind is to keep in mind that a book is a long-term thing. It is not a pattern where a pattern can be long term, but for the most part, as a pattern designer, I would release a pattern and it would be up and popular and exciting to talk about for about 3 months.
Mm-hmm.
And then it would kind of take a backseat for the next pattern. And then you can recycle those patterns after some time, but a book lives on and it has such great content and it's a long term game. It's not a short term game. So, and I should say, I should reiterate that game.
Mm-hmm.
I think I said gain accidentally.
Yeah.
Game. It's a game, not a game, but long term game.
It's a marathon, not a sprint.
Exactly. So I don't make okay.
So
This isn't really answering your question.
Yeah.
Because I feel like people anticipate that marketing a book is going to be like marketing a pattern. Even if you put patterns in a book, it's not the same. It's not the same because it does take so much time and energy, not just for you, but also the person reading it. And I think the real gain from a book is not going to really come and really show up for at least 6 months to a year because they need time to create those projects, to read through and use the information you've put in this book. So anticipating that you're going to get a bunch of books out there, you're going to make a lot of money, and it's going to popularize you and make you this more authoritative person. Part of that is true because you'll have that book and that title of author. However, the real impact won't really show itself for quite a while. And keeping that in mind for your marketing, I think, is key because this should be a long-term marketing plan. Or how can you consistently market your book? One thing I've got in the back of my mind is to use stories. To use, I heard someone. It was an author. It was like he was on his 10th book, and he told the interviewer that he had figured out a way to market every day for his book, and that was to tell micro stories. So that's something I keep in the back of my head. I'm like, micro stories. Micro stories are going to be great to keep selling your book. You could talk about anything inside your book, the techniques, the quotes, the inspiration behind the quotes, the story of the book, why you started the book, why you want to share the book, why stories about when you went and taught the concepts in the book. There are so many ways that you can create micro stories and keep marketing a long-term project for the book.
Yeah, I think that books become so valuable in terms of reaching out to shops and guilds because, as we said, it gives you that authority in this space. And you can have a book signing party. You could just hang out at a shop, with a table with your books, and the shop can promote a meet the author day. There's all sorts of ways you can lecture on the topic of your book. Is obviously the way that we would all anticipate being able to keep marketing your books. So yeah, I think those are all great ideas, and I'd love to hear from our audience what questions they have about publishing and putting their ideas into book form. So definitely leave us a comment, send us an email if you have questions about the self-publishing world. Okay, if you do have questions specifically about launching a project, we would invite you to go back to season 2 where we talked about the launch roller coaster, and that ties into marketing a book. And we just wish everybody great success as they continue to quilt and build their business. So yes.
And I do want to mention our Patreon community where we host a question and answer every month. So if you have direct questions that you want answered by me or Andi, you can join our Patreon. It's really, we've made it $5 or $15, and you can jump in with one of those Q&As and ask us directly your questions.
Yeah, we'd love to see you there. Thanks, everyone.
Hey there, Tori here with the Quilting on the Side podcast. Really quickly, I want to share some exciting news with you. I wrote a book. It's called Workshops Unleashed: How to design engaging and successful workshops for quilters and crafters. So if you're ready to have fun, make money, and truly connect with your students, Workshops Unleashed will guide you every step of the way. You'll learn how to craft sessions that resonate with your audience, attract more participants, and keep them coming back for more. With practical tips, templates, and marketing strategies, you'll discover how to turn your passion for teaching into a thriving business. And this book has everything you need to make your workshops a hit. You can pre-order now through September, your ebook or your paperback version of Workshops Unleashed, and you can check the show notes for the link.
What a great discussion. If you enjoyed this episode of Quilting on the Side, please leave us a review on whichever platform you're listening. It can be iTunes, Spotify, or even our YouTube channel.
And hit the subscribe button so you don't miss our next chat. Until then, remember to have fun in your business and do a little quilting on the side.